we can work with the community, the MSM community, the community advisory board, the religious institutions, and actually pushing the changes of policies. And just lastly, I'm just going to provide a perspective from my country of origin, which is the Democratic Republic of Congo. I don't know if most of you have seen the last month publication by New York Times that actually shows that 2 million women have been raped in the Democratic Republic of Congo at a rate of 1 woman per minute is being raped. And among the statistics, my little sister is part of the statistics of women who have been raped. I think it's really important as we speak about combination prevention, we don't forget that there are some prevention tools that still need to be provided to women and also vulnerable populations. I was in Congo during my last trip and trying to talk to all the implementers. You can't talk about post-exposure prophylaxis. You can't talk about condoms, female condoms, when you're being raped every other day. So I think the need to start really thinking about what do we have. It's not just about new prevention technologies, it's about which new tools do we need that is going to serve the needs of women and key populations. And I think the emphasis of continuing working on microbicides and continuing working on AIDS vaccine and scaling up. We have female condoms, but they're not available. Actually, sorry for sharing my personal experience. I just came a week ago, I went to different sex workers community in Mombasa and looking for a female condom, and there were none. But I'm finding them in the restrooms here. I think this is some of those things that we need to really start thinking about. When we're talking about providing free female condoms, where are they? Can we scale them up and really put them in the hands of people that need them? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And then Slaaen, Kaye?
Slaaen,
Kaye, sorry. Per, how does country ownership translate into better implementation of
process of
combination?
developing this code of good practice. It's also developing a list of core indicators so we can monitor and better evaluate these CBDCTs. It's also creating a network of CBDCTs so that we can perform operational research across countries in Europe. And finally, it's also one of the aims to collect data on a uniform basis so that we can actually compare data across Europe from these CBDCTs, because at the moment there are a lot of good projects going on, but they are in every direction. So we want to try and pull together all of these good experiences into something that we can actually compare across Europe.
This is wonderful. Hello, my name's Julian Howes and I'm from the Global Network for People Living with HIV. And I was really impressed to hear about there's a question and a comment really, because one of the things that we have learned from the implementation with our partners at the PL-HIV Stigma Index is that, of course, however well we work with companies, you know, the global brand of Coca-Cola has universal reach. The global brand of Stigma has greater universal reach. And one of the things that I was going to ask a esteemed colleague from Zimbabwe is that, firstly, in terms of the informal sector, the formal sector, do government contracts perhaps go preferably to companies who are implementing the ILO Code of Good Practice? Is that a strategy which has been thought of? Secondly, in terms of the informal economy, of course, the problem with the informal economy, especially for people living with HIV, is that it is found that when people look ill with HIV, of course, their informal customers disappear. And so I'm wondering whether, you know, the other strand that we always think of is actually doing stigma reduction campaigns that actually turn around and say you are not going to get HIV from buying an orange from this person.
America and the Caribbean. More than a comment, more than a question, I want to make a comment, because I think one of the problems we have is the issue that most of the information about the prevention tools we have are more dependent on how the governmental authorities or doctors are interested to pass to the
protective mechanisms to make sure that women have property and inheritance rights. Because oftentimes women stay in situations that are not conducive to their health, where there is domestic violence, because they don't have other options. Because one, there was that missing component around education, which now leaves them without employment, and which makes them particularly vulnerable in the event that their husband
the
dies.
doctor's agenda and the medical world's agenda. Because actually this whole mantra about test and treat, we've seen slides today that implicate that yes, people on treatment have very, very low viral loads. But this is not necessarily so in other communities. So if we talk about this where medicine is free, then we create the false idea that HIV is actually not very transmissible. But if you travel to America or to some countries in Africa, there's a whole different situation. And a lot of people don't know this. They have this idea that now HIV has become manageable and we're beyond risk. So just that sort of, let's not believe what doctors say all the time.
I'd love to get out of this sector. When the pandemic is over, I will. Right? But I also need to think about, okay, is my agenda, is it central, is everything I do central to people living with HIV? I saw a wonderful thing from Afghanistan which was about harm minimisation. I really believe in harm minimisation. 3,468 people. But I didn't see how many people with HIV they were treated. Right? So let's also look at how targeted the resource that we are having in relation to, the virus actually starts and ends with people living with HIV. And that might be controversial for some people, but I do think we need to have that in our background as we start to prioritise things. And I'll quite happily talk to anybody about that, because sometimes I think we lose sight of that.
Thank you so much for the contribution.
I think one last point that I really wanted to raise is the issues of intellectual property and access to cheap, available drugs, condoms, and commodities. I think it's good to push country ownership, but if you don't push the intellectual properties, if you don't push models like public-private partnership or product development, we will still be talking about these issues 10, 20 years to go. We need to start really talking about combination prevention, but talking about how we're going to get there, and really using the public-private partnership process to reach that goal.
I'm sure that combination prevention, whatever we're going to do, I think most of the time we think that we have to work within the communities. And I think we need to make sure that the private sector is roped into these things, both as a partner, an implementer, and as a recipient of services. I think it's critical that we make sure that the private sector is part of the combination prevention. Otherwise, that's where most of the people who make decisions are found. Thank you.